right now. Things are subject to change, but a lot has happened over the weekend. We did a stream on Friday covering Sam leaving OpenAI, and it seems like 7 lifetimes have passed since that moment. So let's go ahead and open it up for discussion. I know there's a lot of thoughts going around. This was actually Hans sent me a DM a couple hours ago. It's like, yo, should we do a live stream about this? I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and do a live stream about this. So thank you, Hans, for the great idea. So maybe I'll throw it to you, Hans, first, and then you kind of tell us where your head is at, and we'll go to John. So what do you gather from this whole thing? And, let's also keep in mind that anything could break while we're on air right now as well. This is a very fast-moving thing, so I'll keep
Let's
my eyes
actually
open.
hope for that. That would be awesome.
Yeah. We'll actually be here all day. I won't be able to go to the gym. So Hans, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been an absolutely crazy turn of events. I mean, on Friday, OpenAI was literally on top of the artificial intelligence world, and especially after Dev Day, there was so much buzz going on. A lot of people, I think, making a lot of plans to utilize OpenAI as a platform on which to build all kinds of startups, all kinds of business value. And now, just in the course of the last 72 hours, a lot of questions now about who is going to be, controlling OpenAI. What is the role that Sam Altman is going to play at Microsoft? Satya said that the company that was being set up was going to be a subsidiary of Microsoft. So it seems like it's actually going to be its own independent company, kind of like GitHub, that is owned by Microsoft. And so it almost seems like, and I would just have to, give a huge shout out to Satya that apparently they had lots of contingency plans already prepared for things hitting the fan. And you would expect that from a company of the size and sophistication of Microsoft. Obviously, the leadership of Satya to this point has been impeccable. And so that is not at all surprising. And obviously, OpenAI was not nearly as well prepared. And it seems like in the end that Satya is kind of coming out on top with all of this. There's a lot of statements that I've heard over the weekend that there's $50 billion of data center infrastructure spend that Microsoft has slated for 2024, which is greater than any other infrastructure build out in human history, even inflation adjusted. And a company that is planning to spend that much money is definitely going to have a lot of preparation going into the works to make sure that they have everything that they need to have secured in order to be able to move forward with those plans and not be stymied by a little board drama here or there with some tiny little nonprofit company.
John, what's going through your mind?
Oh man, I mean, it's such a roller coaster. What's going through my mind is the hysterical. I don't know if you guys even caught this, but it's such a weird, surreal world that I posted. I said that I'm in my parents' house right now, which is the background, and I was with my mom out driving around and walking, and she said, "Oh, I don't want you to go to Texas next week because that Elon, he's an evil guy and he's trying to take over the world with his billionaire buddies." I literally posted that on X. And then Elon responded to that and said, just wait till she hears about X.AI or xAI. And I was just like, what a surreal world that is that Elon's. So I sent a picture back of my mom going like, hi. So anyway, she said, I hope I go viral. So I really actually hope she does. So everybody should go on X on my account and like that or look at it or something like that. So she goes viral because that'd be pretty cool. She wants to be viral at 85. Go her. As far as the OpenAI stuff specifically, it's, every time I turn around, it's like there's a new development. I mean, the latest was that whole board or whatever, the open letter that, I don't even think it was an open letter, but whatever that letter was that they sent to the board was pretty brutal. So it seemed at first like Ilya Sutskever was kind of in the right, at least from what we were understanding. But now it seems like the tides have massively shifted and everyone is behind Sam and Greg, including Microsoft. Who knows how long the Microsoft support for OpenAI will continue. And if they cut them out, then I don't know what happens to them because they need that compute. That's the only way they remain relevant. So what's going through my mind specifically is that OpenAI could become irrelevant in just a matter of weeks or months. Like, it could be that fast. If all the talent leaves and they don't have compute power anymore, then what are they? There's nothing left.
Yeah, it might actually be quicker than that. So I want to read the letter real quick, so we get everybody
Yeah,
up
please
to
do that.
speed. So real quick, so Hans just sent me this. This is from Ashley Vance. Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, Hans, is somebody who covers Silicon Valley quite closely, right, as far as technology goes? Yeah.
And has a book on Elon. Yeah, from
He does.
2013 or 14. I can't remember what year it was, but a while back. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote the biography before Walter Isaacson did, and so the first one.
And just a point of note is that I heard someone referring to Ashley as a her this morning. So not that I care about the gender pronouns and stuff, but but I believe Ashley identifies as a male. So I just wanted to point that one out. So yes. Anyway.
Okay.
Yes, he does.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
he has actually dropped. So he and Kara have both dropped kind of alternating back and forth scoops on the whole OpenAI drama over the whole weekend. So he and Kara have been a couple of go-tos to follow.
So one of the posts that just came out of Ashley Vance, 700 of 770 OpenAI employees saying they will go now. What is the board going to be a board of? And what this is in respects to, I'm guessing it's just folks jumping on this letter that was written to the board of OpenAI. Let me go ahead and read this so everybody's on the same page. So this was written. This was signed this morning. It was written and signed this morning after Sam and Greg went to, or it was, I guess, not signed, but we found about this letter this morning after Sam and Greg joined Microsoft. So to the board of directors at OpenAI. OpenAI is the world's leading AI company. We, the employees of OpenAI, have developed the best models and pushed the field to new frontiers. Our work on AI safety and governance shapes global norms. The products we built are used by millions of people around the world. Until now, the company we work for and cherish has never been in a stronger position. The process through which you terminated Sam Altman and removed Greg Brockman from the board has jeopardized all of this work and undermined our mission and company. Your conduct has made it clear you did not have the competence to oversee OpenAI. When we all unexpectedly learned of your decision, the leadership team at OpenAI acted swiftly to stabilize the company. They carefully listened to your concerns and tried to cooperate with you on all grounds. Despite many requests for specific facts for your allegations, you have never provided any written evidence. They also increasingly realized you were not capable of carrying out your duties and were negotiating in bad faith. The leadership team suggested that the most stabilizing path forward, the one that would best serve our mission, company stakeholders, employees, and the public, would be for you to resign and put in place a qualified board that could lead the company forward in stability. Leadership worked with you around the clock to find a mutually agreeable outcome, yet within 2 days of your initial decision, you again replaced interim CEO Mira Murati against the best interests of the company. You also informed the leadership team that allowing the company to be destroyed, quote, would be consistent with the mission. Your actions have made it obvious, and this is all in bold, your actions have made it obvious that you're incapable of overseeing OpenAI. We are unable to work for or with people that lack competence, judgment, and care for our mission and employees. We, the undersigned, may choose to resign from OpenAI and join the newly announced Microsoft subsidiary run by Sam Altman and Greg Brockman. Microsoft has assured us that there are positions for all OpenAI employees at this new subsidiary should we choose to join. We will take this step imminently unless all current board members resign and the board appoints 2 new lead independent directors such as Brett Taylor and Will Hurd and reinstate Sam Altman and Greg Brockman. Signed, Mira Murati, the former interim CEO, Brad, Jason, a bunch of other folks, including Ilya Sutskever, who was one of the board members who was part of ousting Sam Altman. So
And actually, just to touch on Ilya, that Ilya said, I think sometime in the middle of the night, I wake up and all this stuff just hits me in the morning. But he said he felt terrible about the whole situation, regretted what had happened, and then Sam posted a retweet of that with a bunch of hearts. So that's just crazy that Ilya, it sounded like, was the orchestrator of this, and now he maybe end up at Microsoft working with Sam again. So it's just can't figure out.
And just quick. Yeah, and this is the post. Yes, I think we covered it at the beginning, but this you'll notice that no, you're good. The undersigned that is part of this letter is also the same person that regretted his participation in the board's actions of letting go Sam.
Right.
Go ahead,
And I
Hans.
can't, I
Or sorry,
cannot
go ahead.
imagine that that like Demis Hassabis over at Google and Elon Musk at xAI are not also making a play for these folks. I mean, we're talking about, you know, we're talking about the NFL stars. These are the people at the top of their game. So they're getting job offers like crazy right now, I would imagine. I would imagine. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw something about 10 to 20 million dollar contracts to pick up people exiting OpenAI. And also I know that George Hotz was putting out a call for OpenAI people as well to come join comma/tinygrad.
Right. And TinyGrad is making some waves too, by the way. It sounds like they're horning in on PyTorch's territory a lot. So that's
Well,
getting
and
into the weeds a little
Andre,
bit, Farzad. Yes.
yeah,
Anyway.
Andre was actually interacting with the tinygrad account in the last 48 hours as well. So that's
Right.
an interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the statement from the new interim CEO. This is Emmett Shear, who co-founded Twitch with the former now CEO of Cruise. That also broke. Cruise CEO resigned.
That's just a
after that
small
whole thing.
story in amongst
Yeah.
all the rest of this stuff.
Yeah. And
As I
Starship
predicted, Cruise
had a
is
launch.
going to Cruise is going to sunset very, very quietly and very rapidly. They're not going to be relevant anymore either. So, but yeah, and Starship launched, no big deal. So yeah,
Yeah,
Jeez.
a lot of stuff this weekend. And this is Emmett Shear, the current interim CEO. Today I got a call inviting me. This is yesterday. Today I got a call inviting me to consider a once in a lifetime opportunity to become the interim CEO of OpenAI. After consulting with my family and reflecting on it for just a few hours, I accepted. And then he went through a whole thing on what his priorities are. The 3-point plan for the next 30 days: hire an independent investigator to dig into the entire process leading up to this point and generate a full report. Continue to speak to as many of our employees, partners, investors, and customers as possible, and reform the management and leadership team in light of recent departures into an effective force to drive results to our customers. Unfortunately, it looks like he may only have 70 people to oversee instead of 770. So just it's wild. And one of the things that Hans, you brought up earlier was that what a masterclass move by Microsoft. And sort of, if those that follow that are fans of Game of Thrones, there's a character in the show, Littlefinger, Peter Baelish. He has a very famous line in the show, and the show is about, basically capitalizing on chaotic opportunities to get more and more power. And one of the things that he said was, chaos is a ladder. And boy, did Microsoft climb that ladder, y'all. They're like the best climbers of ladders here. I think, the way I think about this whole thing is, one of the reasons why OpenAI was founded in the first place, at least the intention behind it, if we were to take the founding members at their word, one of which, the biggest one, is Elon Musk, is that it was made for to ensure that the outcome of AI was as good as possible, with the mindset of ensuring the safety was paramount. AI safety was paramount. But now it seems like we have transitioned into a world where it's just for profit, just fly as fast as you can, and let's get to AGI. Let's get to AGI. And that initial vision of safety, being careful about our steps, it seems like that's taken a giant back seat. And a lot of the actions that have transpired in the last 72 hours, I think, reinforces that. Do you guys feel the same? Do you have any commentary around that? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, my commentary actually has to do with Elon posting again last night. He reposted something that Ilya had posted, I believe it was October 3rd, where he said, if you value human intelligence above everything else, you're in for a bad time. I'm not quoting that perfectly, but pretty close. He pretty closely said that. And Elon last night said, "Uh-oh." And then I responded to that, and he responded to me and explained it in more depth. And there's also this kind of floating rumor. It sounds like it maybe isn't as much as people thought, but that they may have made major progress. OpenAI may have made a major step, and they had gone to a level of general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, that was unprecedented, which led to the inflection point. Now, it seems like that's probably not the case after looking at the rest of the stuff this morning. But if that is, that also adds a level of existential risk. Farzad, as you were saying, if it's all a race to get to this thing first, nobody's paying attention to what happens after. It's just go, 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 go. And that's a terrifying thing. So yeah.
Go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, I think that so there's a couple. I've been down almost every rabbit hole imaginable on all of this drama over the weekend, and one that was interesting was the Igor, who's on the xAI team, back in June had posted that he keeps coming back to this paper that was basically looking at a trade-off between inference time compute versus training compute.
1 second,
and that
Hans. Who is Igor?
he is one of the founding members of xAI.
Okay.
And so the implications,
last name Babushkin, right? Igor Babushkin. Yes.
I can't pronounce it, so I wasn't going to try.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say
Way
I'm
to put him
butchering
on
it,
the
I'm
spot
sure.
there, John.
I'm sorry. No, but I think I'm mispronouncing
Yeah.
it, but it's close to that. So anyway, yes, sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. The implications of the paper that he was looking at were that you can take a model and you can get equal performance out of a model that takes less time to train, less resources to train. But if you give it more resources at inference, that you actually, so it would actually take a long, like one example that I heard was, if you gave the inference computer 5 minutes to process an answer instead of 5 seconds, that you would end up getting a significantly better answer. Like he said 10x, you could get a 10x, an equivalent response from a model that had been trained for 10x less time if you gave it 10x more resources at inference. And so the implication of this is that, they have GPT-5 working internally, I'm sure. They have probably done something similar to this to test, okay, let's get a preview of what GPT-6, GPT-7, whatever our next models are that we're planning to, they know how much compute that they're going to throw at the training. And so they can probably get an idea of exactly how those models are going to perform already today. And this may be something that plays into the comments that Sam Altman made about, I've been in the room just here in the last month when we have significantly pushed back the veil of ignorance and made significant progress in the realm of research on AI. And then there's also, a number of comments that have been made about people are going to be surprised at the quality of the models that are going to be available to people in 2024. And so, that kind of lends a little bit of credence to this. And then I want to come back and say, okay, if there is significant concern and seems to be some tension inside of OpenAI between the EAs, the effective altruist crowd, and who are kind of decelerationist right now. They want to slow down, they want to pause, they want to pull back. And then the effective accelerationists, who are more the techno-optimist crowd, that they just want to hit the gas, move forward, move fast, break things, traditional Silicon Valley style. And then if you look at the constitution of the board itself, you've got 3 people who are on the team. You've got Ilya, you've got Greg, you've got Sam, and then you've got 3 people who are not on the team. And so there's this like balance of power. And then from what we've seen from several other reporting sources about the fact that the demo day and moving forward on GPTs, that was really a concern for Ilya and a lot of the safety people inside of OpenAI. It seems like there was a little bit of a rift between Ilya and Sam and Greg. And, a lot of people are saying that Ilya is the instigator and the mastermind behind this whole coup. I am wondering if, in fact, that there has been some misalignment of incentives between the other 3 board members who are not team members and the technical team, and that they capitalized on an opportunity where they saw division between Ilya, Sam, and Greg and the technical team, and it broke the balance of power on this 6-person board, and it allowed the 3 non-technical members to poach Ilya over to their side, they saw a window of opportunity to make a move that they felt was in the best interest of humanity long term, for better or for worse, rightly or wrongly. And I think that, to me, makes the most sense based on what we have seen from Ilya and his, going back on his word, or not his word, but going back on his position and saying that he regrets participating in the actions of the board. To me, that makes more sense coming from someone who ended up getting used as a pawn than someone who was a mastermind. And it could have been that he had one outcome in mind that he thought was feasible and wasn't able to actually deliver on that. And that is the reason for his regret. But that's kind of one of the scenarios that I think is definitely highly possible and potentially even probable.
So I guess the overarching premise here, though, is that now Microsoft, essentially, as long as nothing else happens here, and this is sort of the end state, it's Microsoft has been handed AI supremacy in a way, right? They have the most advanced AI tool in the world so far. They have basically they're going to have all the talent that made that most advanced AI tool in the world. They have probably orders of magnitude more resources at their disposal versus little old OpenAI to make that most advanced AI in the world even more advanced, which in theory, if you can use that AI to make the AI better, you have this like escape velocity of technology that Microsoft potentially has at its disposal, right? So what's the likelihood that this move just makes... Go ahead, John. You were going to say something.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to say, let's also not forget that there's no longer an alignment problem, because there was always, Elon has been very vocal about the fact that OpenAI was named OpenAI. It was supposed to be not-for-profit, open source, and they weren't. Now, if everybody gets subsumed under Microsoft's umbrella, it's for profit. It's clearly, there's no longer this tension. So they can just go whatever metaphor you want, pedal to the metal, as fast as they can. But also, let's not forget about Google, because Google has DeepMind, and they're going to be releasing Gemini. It was supposed to be like now, but I guess it'll be first quarter of 2024. That is supposed to be a pretty major competitor to OpenAI and ChatGPT. And then we've all seen, I unfortunately still don't have access to Grok, but we've all seen how impressive Grok is after a very short period of training. So there's also, I'm hoping, I think, Farzad, what you said is stating one case, which is that Microsoft becomes a monopoly. It's sort of like, weirdly enough, like the hardware space or the software space in the 1990s, where they were just about to put Apple out of business and become the de facto like everything. I hope that doesn't happen, because more competition is good. And I'm going to take the devil's advocate position, which is that hopefully this chaos, like you said, chaos is a ladder. And so hopefully it will spread the intellectual seeds out further, instead of just everyone, all 700 people just going and becoming part of Microsoft. I hope that xAI and Google and some other startups and Anthropic and other places will get some of this talent, because I think it will be to the good of humanity if that happens.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. As long as that talent sort of pool does disperse, right? Like, one of the things, I have a couple super chats I want to bring up here from Pecco's Bill. Thank you so much for the super chat, 279 Canadian. John Carpathy implications to xAI. So John Carpathy is not John Carpathy.
I think
is it?
Maybe directed to me or Andre. I don't know.
Oh,
maybe it was directed to me, and he was asking about Carpathy.
Got it. John Carpathy implications.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because Andre has been very, he had a.
And sorry, John, one second. Can you give a little bit of like background who Carpathy is? Yeah.
Okay, so Andre, I think he started at OpenAI directly out of grad school, but maybe I'm wrong. He might have had some, but anyway, he was at OpenAI. Then he was poached to work at Tesla, where it was leading the Tesla FSD AI team. Then, left, took a sabbatical, decided to chill. Then he came back to OpenAI, and he has been working on a thing called Jarvis, which I believe is like the Jarvis from Iron Man, like an AI assistant. And then, so that's the context. And then obviously everything's just been the table. Somebody said this, I don't know if it was Jason Calcanis or somebody, they said, they were playing, everyone was playing chess, and somebody just flipped the table over. It's like, we're done. And so he posted this morning a radiation sign, like toxic, radiation. So clearly he's not happy with the situation, even though he wasn't signed on to that document. So and he also has quite the relationship with Elon. They have a very friendly relationship, even though he came and went from Tesla. So Elon poaching him back to xAI or to Tesla, I doubt he would go back to Tesla. I think he likes working on the research stuff, but I could definitely see him deciding to go to xAI. I mean, that lean, mean startup machine. Yeah, there it is. so yeah, that's not a good sign when somebody's doing that when they're in the middle of a gigantic overhaul. So I think he'll either move with Sam and go to Microsoft, and who knows? Right as we're speaking right now, there might be people throwing money at him or whatever else he wants. I don't think Audrey even cares about the money, but it's like whatever you want, more compute, more resources, whatever you want, we'll give it to you. So he may be like sitting in the proverbial catbird seat right now, just waiting to see who gives him the best offer. So anyway, but I do think that xAI is a reasonable contender for getting him.
So that would be sort of a positive of what you just described, where the seeds sort of start spreading everywhere, right? So that's like a good outcome. I
really hope that some of the people go to some of these other companies, because if everybody just goes to Microsoft, then it's like it's an unfortunate, like it actually makes the situation worse. Not that I have a problem with Microsoft getting as much as they can get, but one power in this is not the answer. For Microsoft, I bet it is, but not for us.
Yeah, good, huh?
Yeah, I think that regardless of where all the people go, one of the things is it definitely slows down the progress that OpenAI was making. Like, there's no way that they get fully integrated into Microsoft and just hit the ground running. They do have access to all of the model weights from all of OpenAI's models. And so there's a lot of stuff actually that they do get. And I think it will be relatively seamless for the team if they all just transition over to this Microsoft subsidiary. They can kind of pick up, but it's still like, even in the best case scenario, it's still at least slowed down some, which does give a lot of other people a little bit of room to work on closing the gap and catching up and making some progress. And yeah, I think that obviously, I'm not as optimistic on Google's ability to compete here. I think that they have too much bureaucracy. I just don't think they move fast enough. I think that they're always going to be too far behind. Whatever they release is just not going to be competitive for a number of reasons, both internal structure wise, but then also they need to solve, if they're going to make progress, one of the things that they have to do is they have to solve the integration of LLMs and AI into advertising. Like, Microsoft has a very diverse, robust business model that is not dependent on advertising revenue really in any of its sources of income, much less almost 100% in the case of Google. And that's just a hard problem to solve. And so they have to do that. And really, they have to fix that company has been specifically structured to suck up talent and do nothing for a decade now. And so they have to go from doing nothing to actually, putting out product and moving quickly. And so that's a huge culture shift. And I just don't see that happening for Google either.
Yeah. Welcome, Dave. Dave, it's so good to have you back on YouTube, dude. Man, it's great.
So good to see you. Yeah, it's welcome back to YouTube. And also congrats on getting to see that launch. That was a great video.
Thanks.
I love the pictures of the kids. It was a lovely video. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Everybody do.
Awesome. Yeah, I was making this video of my kids and I watching the launch, and I was like thinking, I don't want to edit it or make it. I just won't do it. And then the last minute, I'm like, I'll just put it up anyways. And then, it seemed like some people watched it, and it's helpful. So yeah, definitely great time at the launch.
It was awesome.
It was just it was a lovely human take on it. I like that, because everyone's got shots. I mean, not that I'm complaining about that, but shots of the launch and people cheering. But it was just magical. I really, really appreciated it. I said that to my wife. I was watching it while driving yesterday, since the car was driving me anyway. Shh, don't tell anybody. But But anyways,
arrested.
Yeah, I'm arrested in retrospect. Arrested. Yeah. Anyway.
So Dave, I mean, I know you've been following this incredibly closely. You've been in the AI space nose down for the better part of a year, it seems, and this is something that you were talking about on your live stream on your channel maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, and sort of we're discussing all the different implications of this whole thing. Where's your sort of head at? Maybe from, if you can summarize it for us, for those that didn't have a chance to watch your live stream yet, and then where do you see this going?
Yeah. So first of all, I was listening to your guys' discussion, so I felt it would be cool just to hang out. I think you guys are up to date on most of the information anyways. But yeah, I think one thing to add in this discussion is there's a lot of momentum in the past hour or two or 3 hours shifting, where Sam Altman just tweeted several minutes ago, about 5 minutes ago or something, a couple of tweets. But basically, it seems like he's getting more confident right now about the outcomes, and it looks like right, you have over 700 people who have signed the letter, and I think what happens is there's a scenario where let's say 750 people or so sign the letter or something. The board resigns because Ilya was kind of the main person in that board. There were only 3 OpenAI employees in the board. It was Sam, who was the CEO, Greg Brockman, who was the president and chairman, and then Ilya, who was the chief scientist. Then you had Adam D'Angelo from Quora, and then 2 others who were kind of more obscure AI researchers, etc. So we thought that Ilya was the person driving everything. But now this morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, he changes and he says, "I regret everything. I'm sorry, right?" Trying to fix everything. And now you have over 700 employees signing this letter for the board to resign. Who is the board, though? It's the 3 non-OpenAI employees left, right? So if they basically resign, which right now, I think it's high probability they're going to resign, because they don't even have Ilya anymore, right? So if they resign in the next 24 hours or so, then a new board comes. Sam and Greg are back on the board. Sam is back as CEO, right? He has a better board on backing him, and now he's more powerful than before. He's more boldened.
If that happens, what happens to the Microsoft thing? Because Microsoft has said that he's coming on board with them. Or do you think OpenAI will become the Microsoft entity?
I think it was a verbal. I think it was a verbal agreement. Because think about it. It happened late at night at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. They're not going to get lawyers to draft 100 pages of signed documents and have their lawyers sign everything, go back and forth. It's a verbal thing where I think what happened was Satya Nadella says, yeah, come to Microsoft. We'll give you unlimited compute. We'll give you all the data possible. We'll give you access to OpenAI's IP through our agreement with OpenAI. So you can just go off running to the races, and you can spin off your own company at any time you want with majority ownership. Right? It was the deal they couldn't refuse. It was perfect.
Best deal ever.
Yeah. Best. It was the best. Exactly. And
but then why wouldn't they do that as opposed to going back to OpenAI, which is going to have, The
only reason why I think they wouldn't do it is it's actually better for Sam and Greg to do that in terms of their personal ownership stake, because they'll have significant chunk in this new company that they spin off eventually, right? They'll first use OpenAI's IP, all the weights. And here's the thing, not that just with GPT-4, it's possible that their agreement allows Microsoft to get IP to their GPT-5 weights if they've trained the GPT-5 based model already. If that's happened, then it's game over, because they'll have access to, they have all the people who made the model, they have the architecture, everything, the weights. They'll just be off to the races. Once they finish GPT-5, then they could spin off as a new company, own majority of the company. They'll own right now, Sam doesn't even own any shares, right, of OpenAI. So it's a much better deal for him. In my opinion, the only reason why I think he would consider going back to OpenAI is just kind of a cleaner, simpler kind of, there's complexity when you're joining Microsoft, quote unquote, it's just to go back, and he's reinstated as kind of the leader, the hero, the next, I think he wouldn't mind that, I don't think he's in it for the ownership anyways. But
I wonder though, because OpenAI has its own. Go ahead.
So I wanted to let Hans go real quick, so he can walk in and we'll throw it over to you.
Yeah.
No, go.
I was just going to say that there's only, at this point, there's a couple of liabilities that are at issue with OpenAI. One of them is this weird governance structure that apparently has some flaws right now that need to get worked out. Like, how on earth does a one-person majority on the board eject the chairman of the board? Like, that's just absolutely bonkers to me in the first place. But so they can get the 3 members off the board, and then apparently 70 people who haven't signed the letter. Like, there's not that many people that are involved in basically purging OpenAI of the non-true believers. And so it is simpler from that standpoint, I guess. And then, they will have the leeway that they need to fix the governance issues moving forward if they do that.
But I think what's interesting there, and I'll throw it to you, John, is like the safety angle seems to just not be there anymore. This is like we were talking about before. It seems like it's just go as hard as you can to develop this thing for profit. If this whole deal with Microsoft could it just basically crystallizes the way Dave outlined, what is keeping this thing from just being 100% for profit, put safety to the side, and just keep going? And how big of a risk is that really to the broader sense of AI? Like, is that really, like, should we be concerned about that, or is this really the better outcome? Is this the better outcome?
Man, I was going to say the same thing Hans did, which was that OpenAI's governance board, that is a significant issue, because the fact that they started as a nonprofit and now they're for that makes it complex. So, I think you're right, Dave, but I think also if he's going to come back, they're probably going to have to tear up whatever it was and start over again to some extent, as much as they can. I don't know what that's going to leave them open to, but as far as I am not a big fan of this headlong race by just a few companies. I really, and you started this off, Farzad, by talking about the $50 billion investment that Microsoft is putting into to infrastructure, to hardware and everything. There's not that many countries in the world, much less businesses, that could actually afford to put that kind of money into this. And it's a little terrifying I would much prefer lots and lots of small companies be able to do this. And maybe that is just going to happen because the technology, just like Moore's Law, we're going to see the AI version of Moore's Law, which is that these amount of AI compute is keeps growing and growing at a smaller and smaller hardware investment. Hopefully that will happen. I don't know. But anyway, we'll see. But it does scare me. I don't really want Microsoft. And then I think Hans, that's a good point about Google being very bureaucratic and stuck in their old ways. But even them as a second string player, and then xAI as the dark horse potential candidate coming in, that's still not a lot of players. I'd love to have Anthropic and a bunch of other ones out there who could play as well, because I think that's going to lead to more safety than just one or two companies dominating everything. That's my personal opinion.
Dave, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll change the topic a little bit, but so I had this thought this morning of, what if you have AGI eventually, let's say 10 years down the road or something. Let's say it's like hockey stick intelligence has surpassed human intelligence in terms of the amount of artificial intelligence out there. We're headed toward artificial super intelligence eventually. Why would artificial super intelligence think that? Why would artificial super intelligence allow humans to control it? Considering, like, it looks at the fickle nature of OpenAI's board, just the fickle nature of humanity, right? And how humans can be so volatile, changing, unreliable. Why would artificial superintelligence want, like, keep itself underneath that? It would just be like, would you blame artificial superintelligence for making a case that it doesn't want to be under that fickle, volatile nature of humanity and human decisions? And that's the thing. This board, they're smart people, right? This isn't like these are people who know about AI, who are in the know, and yet they're able to be swayed by many different things and regret their decisions a couple days later. But I was thinking, what would Ilya give to just go back in time 3 days? It's like, you can't. Like, that's the thing. You just can't go back in time.
That'll be his first question to the AI: is please build me a time machine so I can go back and fix the problem. Yeah.
But
the fact that we're still in this timeline means that apparently Fast Takeoff hasn't figured out time travel anytime too soon.
Yeah. But yeah, it poses like an interesting issue, just like this thought of, yeah, humans do have some of this fallibility or volatility, fickleness, whatever. And what is that relationship going to be with artificial super
I think
intelligence, right?
who oh gosh, somebody talked about this specifically, that humans are going to be like trees or slower compared to the AI as well. And they were saying it's like the trees in the Amazon rainforest going like, oh yeah, we're going to figure out how to stop those humans. And you know, and then meantime it's like and the whole forest is cut down. It's just that you know, once that AI happens, it's so much faster than we are. All the computer's doing, even while I'm doing all of this stuff right now, 90% of what it's doing is just hanging around waiting for stuff to happen. So, you know, it's got so much extra overhead of time. So if we get to that hockey stick moment, yeah, I think Dave's right. I think why would it allow us to do things? I'm hoping we're treated as pets. I think that would be an ideal outcome. I don't think it's going to allow us to govern ourselves, because I don't think it's going to consider us safe to govern ourselves.
The one
ahead,
weird
Hans.
counter argument that I would make to that is that, yes, on an individual level, and this is kind of a case for decentralization, on an individual level, humans are extremely messy. And then even, you know, in small groups. But if you look at the evolutionary process as a whole, it's very beautiful organic development that has this uniform arc of, well, not uniform, but this arc of progress that we have been on over the last several thousand years that has brought us to this very rich, very complex world that we live in, that actually is able to give rise to something that may or may not be an autonomous form of an intelligence. And so I do think that there's a possibility that it views the overall, like the human organism as a whole, as a very interesting and valuable entity, whether the individual, you know, constituent, whether you want to call us neurons in a, you know, a giant social brain or whatever it is, whether we have, you know, mess to us or not. I think the overall superorganism is something that is both fascinating, beautiful, and valuable.
Mhm. If you don't mind, I'll give this another crazy thought exercise here. So
Yeah, of course.
right before going to bed, I was watching this Ilya video of him explaining some risks of AI, and he was saying he envisions in the future these data centers having like huge amounts of GPUs, right, running these crazy AI agents, um, and are powered like a data center would be powered by solar panels that would be enough electricity for 10 million homes. So I was like, what in the world would that type of data center be like, you know? And so I asked ChatGPT, I'm like, okay, how much power is powering 10 million homes? Like how much of electricity? ChatGPT says it's 100 terawatt hours, right, of electricity for 1 year. So I'm like, okay, how many solar panels do we need to power 100 terawatt hours per year? ChatGPT says 225 million solar panels. I go, okay, how much would that cost? Okay, at 70 cents per watt, let's say at 320 watts per solar panel, ChatGPT says it'll cost about $50 billion, right, to create that. I said, how many H100 GPUs would that power? ChatGPT says 17 million H100. Of course, H100 would be completely obsolete by then. But just to give you an idea of the scale, can you imagine something that just like millions and millions of solar panels powering millions of GPUs in a data center? Like, what kind of AI would that power? We're talking about something thousands and thousands or whatever, many orders of magnitude more
So
powerful than what
basically,
we
we
know
could just
now.
take Nevada and turn it into a compute cluster. Just cover the whole thing with solar panels. A
Exactly.
little hole for Las Vegas in the middle, and Reno.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, but it's interesting. I was like thinking about this. I went to sleep last night, like, you know, thinking about 10 million, whatever homes of power. And this is the stuff that's going through Ilya's mind, like all the time, if you think about it. But it's also, it could mental him in a way, like make him a bit kind of like, you know, like maybe overreactive to certain things. And I think he treated the CEO leadership change as simply just a change of leadership. Oh, let's just take out somebody, put in another person, because another person would be better, I think, for this trajectory. He didn't understand. He wasn't thinking through any of the ramifications at all, right? The backfire, the support, anything else, right? He was just purely looking at it logically. You've got these data centers across the world battling each other, these crazy AIs. Who's going to be best to, what's the best possibility these AGI agents are close to, let's say, super intelligent agents are humanity positive. They're like, they have feelings of affinity toward humanity. Who's going to lead
pro-human.
us better? Yeah, pro-human. Who's going to lead us closer in that path, probability-wise? And he thinks, Sam Altman, maybe there's someone better. Let's change it, right? That's his equation, right? And that's what happened. But he had no clue that, everything would just blow up like what happened, I think.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that Mark Andreessen had a really interesting segment in his conversation with Lex Friedman a few months back, I guess now. And he talks about that exact dynamic of the people that are intimately involved in creating a technology being so close to it that they have, they really are not the right people in order to make moral judgments about the high level things about the use of that technology. And he was talking about Oppenheimer and von Neumann back when the atom bomb was developed in the Manhattan Project, and similar, just like the moral implications of all that, and how that was something that weighed very heavily on Oppenheimer, and that caused him potentially, that like it's highly likely that out of that guilt that Oppenheimer felt about developing the bomb, that he orchestrated Russia actually being given the technology for nuclear weapons from the United States, basically.
Interesting. I will throw in, because my day job is in the humanities, and we actually are having a discussion at work at UGA about getting this National Endowment for the Humanities grant to do a humanities in AI like center or whatever. But regardless of that, it's making me thinking about this stuff. But Hans, I completely agree. I feel like a lot of these companies, and I've actually talked to these companies because, of course, I'm like, hey, yeah, you want me to work with you? They're like, no, you're not a rock star, this stuff. But I'm like, no, you actually, not me necessarily, but some group of people who are more, not exactly the super duper engineers, but people who are thinking about this, philosophers, historians, just a group of people like that to give these companies a little more perspective. I don't know exactly how that fits within the culture, but I think, Farzad, you were talking about that, that sort of just helter-skelter, like we're just going to get to AI and we don't, AGI, and we don't care what happens, damn the consequences. And I think having some people in the culture of these companies who are like, well, let's think about this in a little different way. And I think Ilya is a good example of that. I feel bad for him right now. I think that he got caught in a something storm that he did not realize. I think you're absolutely right. He was like, oh yeah, we'll take these little Lego pieces and we'll take this blue one out and put a green one in. And it was like, oh no, that's not the way human interactions work at all. And he was like, uh-oh. So I think he was caught very by surprise.
And I don't know if I would say that they don't necessarily care. They don't care about the safety aspect of it. I just think that the forcing function that a corporation will have on artificial intelligence will be a purely for-profit motive that could have unintended consequences. And that's why OpenAI, I think, was created in the first place, was to try and ensure there was a likely outcome, a positive outcome for humanity that takes into account some of those variables that perhaps a for-profit corporation won't like. They will just drive with, So then let me ask a question to the panel. What's the likelihood that Microsoft has won already? Like, isn't this, especially taking into account that sort of artificial intelligence is a sort of a thing that will help itself get better over time? Isn't the player with the most resources at their disposal automatically the winner because AI is a compute and data game, and it's not so much a let's come up with the code to make it work better game? Like, what are the chances that Microsoft has won already?
I'll disagree. I think the human factor is still very important. At some point, the AI is going to get smart enough that it's going to be able to bootstrap itself, which is when the hockey stick moment happens. But I still believe that we haven't come up with the right architecture. Transformers are kind of dumb. Um, as a lot, and not just me. There's a lot of people way smarter than me that say that. They're like, it's like a brute force kind of, make it work by giving it billions of data points kind of thing. It's not elegant. And I believe that there is the human aspect of people thinking of better architectures. So I don't think you're going to get there. Now maybe it's going to be an AI that will come up with its own better architecture, but I think there are better architectures and more elegant ones. So yeah, Hans, sorry.
I was just going to say that for what it's worth, Ilya disagrees with you. I'm not in a position to judge, but his position is that transformers will work. There may be better architectures that will work better, use less compute, use less energy. But it's just a question of how much compute and data do you have to throw at it, that there is a workable AGI model that is just transformer based. And if they can find more efficient ways to do that, great. But that it is achievable just with transformers. So and that's kind of, it seems like, what they are pursuing or were pursuing at OpenAI before this.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to divide up the time frame. Let's say 1 to 3 years, and then 3 to 10 years, or something. In the 1 to 3 year time frame, OpenAI has been so far ahead of the game that it's like basically no one can catch them in that 1 to 3 year time frame. Maybe 3 years, but OpenAI would have to slow down. It's just because people are still catching up to GPT-4, but GPT-4 was trained in 2022. That's the reality. They finished training GPT-4 in 2022, right? This is like 2 years later, and people still haven't released a competitor to GPT-4 yet, right? We're talking about this is 2 years later. And so OpenAI has already progressed, right? They've moved on to, you have the GPT-4V model, but you have GPT-5. They're working on other new things ahead of that as well. And so in the 1 to 3 year model, it's like, yeah, there's not much, as much as Google with their Gemini and their other efforts. They're just trying to catch up to GPT-4 the next year and surpass that. That's their goal in 1 to 2 years, right? They're not trying to get to GPT-5 level in the next 1 year or 2 years, right? They just can't. So that's one side of the story. Is 1 to 3 years, it's kind of already there, it's determined. Where it gets more interesting is in the 3 to 7 year time period, where now it gets more complex, because OpenAI needs to keep up their pace of innovation and their lead in order to keep that 3 to 7 year lead. But it's hard to do that because a lot of the techniques that OpenAI has used is out in the open. Like, they've borrowed the techniques from other places too. They didn't invent transformers, they were the ones reading the attention is all you need paper and saying, this is interesting stuff. Exactly. They're like, hey, Google's got some interesting stuff. Let's copy this, right? That's what happened with OpenAI. So in the 3 to 7 year time period, everyone's like knows how OpenAI is doing what they're doing. It's a matter of who can come up with a business model and the guts to spend the billions of dollars needed to train the size of the model that OpenAI is trying to train as well. Meaning, for example, if GPT-6 costs $10 billion to train, who's going to train? Who's going to compete with that cost, that amount of money, right, to train that model? If whoever has that money and whoever has that determination, I think in a 3 to 7 year time period, if they can keep up with the top leader in terms of training costs, they could be a force to reckon with, right? There's enough time to catch up, right? A lot of it is the economics and the business model. Of course, they have to solve the data problem, but the techniques I don't think is the most difficult thing. And so for the 3 to 7 year period, who has the economics to spend that much money? It's Google, it's Microsoft, Apple might, if they get serious, but including the LLMs with their devices, and you have Elon. Right. I mean, you have maybe Anthropic, who has an Amazon who might partner and might buy them out, et cetera. But you have a group of maybe 4 or 5 companies who are willing to spend, right, what it takes to be in the leadership positions with AGI. And so
there's an odd like it's an analogy and it's imperfect, but there's an odd analogy to the early 60s when the Soviets had a massive advantage in the space race. And John Kennedy was like, we can't beat them in the next 5 years, so let's aim for like 9 or 10. And so so what you're talking about, Dave,
Yeah,
sounds like that. It's like
yeah,
you can't
exactly.
beat OpenAI right now, or whatever they become. Maybe it'll become Microsoft because they'll
Yeah.
just get all the talent. But that in the short term, you can't beat them. So you got to set a moonshot for something that would leapfrog them. That would be interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So the question, the thing is, does Microsoft, you're asking for, has Microsoft won? Well, I mean, not really, because OpenAI has won the next couple of years already with, what they've done. Microsoft has won in a sense. They own 49% of OpenAI. They get access to the IP, so they can build their own stuff too, pre-AGI IP. They win in the sense that now they have an option call on Sam and Greg's new company if it gets started right through Microsoft. So they have a lot of these, like, Satya is just a gambling betting man. He just knows where to put his money in the right spots, right? He's just, while at the same time managing this crazy bureaucracy of a $2.8 trillion company, right? It's insane, like the level of chops this guy has. But will Microsoft win in the 3 to 7 year period? Well, they're setting themselves up to be like, they're setting themselves up to be one of the top three for sure, right? It's hard to say Microsoft won't be up there, as one of the top ones at least.
Yeah, go ahead, Hans.
In that 7-year time frame, one of the interesting there's a couple of advantages that I think the Elon effort has, and it would require a little bit of collaboration, but we've kind of seen that already. We talked, while DeepMind is an incredible organization, and I think they are going to continue to pump out research that is game changing for the field of AI. Like even just what they released recently with the graph weather thing and the GNNs, like that's a whole separate rabbit hole. And I think GNNs signal a change in, like, a lot of science up to this point has all been based on deterministic math. And I think that GNNs actually break the stranglehold that deterministic math has on science and simulation moving forward, that's insane. But coming back to Google as a whole, and the fact that they are kind of a slow bureaucratic company that does not operate with the same, like, for Microsoft to be able to have the nimbleness, like Satya's leadership, they are operating with the nimbleness almost of a startup in certain areas, maybe not in every way. But that makes them a company that moves much quicker than a Google. Whatever Anthropic does with Amazon, we just haven't seen anything that Jeff Bezos or Amazon is a part of that can keep up with, they've partnered with Rivian, and we just haven't seen the speed come from that. And so, that really just leaves xAI as the major other player. And on the economic front, that if they purchase renewable energy resources, batteries and solar panels, and they can actually get their input cost from an energy standpoint. And then if Dojo is successful enough to actually reduce the cost to acquire the compute, if they can win on unit economics in energy and in compute cost, and they can optimize, useful compute per watt at xAI, if you run that forward over 7 to 10 years, that looks really good. And also just the speed that we have seen out of xAI and what they have developed with Grok, that they are moving very, very rapidly, and they have a lot going for them in a positive direction.
Yeah, the challenge I think with Grok right now, or with xAI, is like looking at 3 to 7 years. The companies are needing to spend, in 3 to 7 years, tens of billions of dollars on training compute, right? For these large models, if you want to be one of the top, players in AGI. Microsoft spends that without blinking an eye. Google can spend that. Apple can spend that. Can xAI spend that? That's the question mark, right? Where is that money coming from, right? Is Elon selling stock, or is X Corp, right? The app become so profitable that they're, really generating tens of billions of dollars of cash flow? Like, that's kind of the question mark. I think Elon is crazy enough where he's willing to sign the check and fork over whatever he needs to keep up. But I think that's part of I think Elon's genius right now is he's thinking about that. He's thinking about the business model, what's going to fund the cycle of being able to generate tens of billions of dollars for cash flow to invest in this. Can Tesla do it? Yeah, actually, I think Tesla can do it. Actually, Tesla can actually fork over 10 billion, whatever, 20 billion in compute power.
This is and Dave, I think I'll jump on that. I think that an advantage that xAI has that is something that people really are not like conceptualizing is that they, through Elon, I don't know exactly how the relationship would work, but they have access to and a relationship with Tesla's AI team. And I am a very big proponent that I think that the first thing that's going to get to AGI is not a large language model, but something like full self-driving. Because large language models are already dealing with an abstracted version of reality because language is an abstraction of reality. So it's already like a step removed from reality, whereas something that has to deal with actual reality and make decisions based on that. Now, I don't think it'll be the car version of full self-driving, but the Optimus version, the one that's dealing with the robot, that we're going to start to see Grok and I hate calling it FSD because it's not, but whatever the Optimus version of FSD is, when we see those two things get married, that's going to be really interesting. So I think that's the dark horse weird left turn angle that could come in and change the whole landscape.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, going along with that, it's like Tesla Optimus robot will need Grok, will need the language side, but also Grok or xAI will need training compute. Tesla has Dojo, or at least is ramping that up. So it's going to be interesting. Like I'm proposing Tesla make an investment in xAI, get some equity, and give like Dojo compute, like make it more of a formal partnership here, because xAI is going to need a lot of cash for compute. They're going to need a lot of training as well. Tesla's going to need whatever Grok has. So let's ink the deal. Let's get Tesla to get 25% of xAI.
Do you think these shareholders at large, since Tesla unfortunately I love that Tesla's a publicly traded company because I can buy shares, but it seems like that adds a layer of complexity to being able to ink a deal like that, because they'd say, wait, you're going to give compute resources that you desperately need for Tesla to this other company? I'm just asking because I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
It would have to be a shareholder vote, because people would scream like, oh, Elon is funding his own company, like whatever. So Elon would have to recuse himself, and shareholders would have to vote on the actual terms of the deal, right? But yeah, it would be a quick vote. And I think shareholders would overwhelmingly vote to take equity in xAI. I think it'd be good.
I'd vote for it. Hans, I'm seeing you're putting some pretty interesting stuff in the private chat. So the other angle too, SpaceX being a private company and maybe Starlink not being spun out could be one of the reasons why, so that it gives Elon more cash to play with to potentially invest into resources for xAI. Hans, go ahead and riff off of that, because that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering, and we saw that Elon has responded recently to saying that Starlink's not IPOing anytime soon. And that was one of the things that he had said in the past, was that they would IPO Starlink once cash flow is consistent in ramping. And so it seems like from the outside, we don't have the books, and so we don't know for sure, but it seems like that we're at that point. So for him to delay that is interesting. It doesn't signal that exactly, but I do see a lot of benefit from Elon's standpoint, even though as an investor, I would love to own SpaceX stock. That keeping it as a private company gives Elon a lot more room to operate and do what he wants. And if Starlink continues to just be this ginormous cash generating machine, I mean, he still does have to use that to fund the growth of SpaceX. And there's a lot of CapEx that is involved there. So I don't know how much excess above and beyond that Starlink will be generating. But that is definitely one potential source of funding. And then the other thing on what you were talking about, John, if Microsoft can do a deal with OpenAI to provide them with lots of Azure compute, I'm sure that there's something that Microsoft is also a public company, so there's got to be some ways that Tesla could do a deal with xAI to do that.
That is
Yeah.
true. Yeah. I mean, I think that you just have to show, Tesla has to show where they get the benefit. And if xAI says we're going to give you access to Grok, that would be all they would really have to, to be like, oh, cool, you get a large language model out of this. So yeah.
Yeah. On the Starlink point, actually, I think IPOing. So the idea behind the Starlink IPO has always been not to release all the shares at once, but you do, like, for example, SpaceX would keep 90% of the shares, maybe IPO 10% to raise cash for their investments, and then over time they would just sell a little bit over time, right, to raise more cash. So, but Starlink has gone much better than expected, and like, for example, supposedly SpaceX revenue is jumping from 9 billion to like 15 billion next year, and because of Starlink, and it's already like Elon tweeted that SpaceX Starlink was cash flow positive or break even. People took it as Starlink. I actually am taking it like more as SpaceX, and
The
that's more,
whole thing.
yeah, because you can't really separate those two companies. Like what is Starlink's expenses? Like a lot of it is launch expenses, you know. Like how do you separate that? It's like they're one company, and to see the trajectory of SpaceX's revenue growth, and I know their expenses. I'm actually, if I think SpaceX actually did go cash flow break even when Elon tweeted. If not, it'll be in a very, very, very soon, within like 6 months. That's my opinion. So because of that, it's like SpaceX is going much better than anyone anticipated financially. They don't need the extra cash. Starlink is a cash cow. If Elon wanted more cash for xAI for training compute, he could actually IPO Starlink. That would be actually a good thing for him to do, generate cash without selling Tesla. But I don't know. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he'd rather keep SpaceX ownership private. He probably would, if he had to, sell some Tesla to fund xAI if he needed to. But yeah.
Yeah. I do wonder how much of the stuff that has happened in the last couple of days, sort of, and what we're discussing here with sort of Tesla being a player in the 3 to 7 year phase, and plus other players as well, because it all comes down to how many resources you have at your disposal to spend on compute, and only the companies that have a ton of money in their bank or ability to raise cash are really the ones that are at a huge advantage. I wonder how much of the stuff that's happening over the weekend is going to light that fire under, say, an Elon or a Tesla to go all in on that mission, even more than they are already, and really expedite whatever they need to. Like, for example, could we see as soon as next weekend, could we see that proposal, that says, hey, Tesla is going to take a piece of xAI and try to provide resources to the team so that they can run their AI models and compete with Microsoft, and then we get a piece of the pie because we get sort of they're running our compute, we get money for running the compute, so on and so forth. So I wonder how much this is an accelerant to that, because it has to be with Microsoft now, again, being in this situation when they're just going all in into this and accelerating their. Okay, so let me reframe it. Let me reframe the question. Has this accelerated what OpenAI is doing, or is this just keeping the status quo? Like, do we think this is an accelerant?
Yeah, I mean, from Elon's perspective, let's imagine you're Elon Musk and you're looking at the unfolding of this craziness. A lot of these players personally. Sam Altman. Ilya. The whole team. Andre's part of that. You understand what's at stake here. And you see Microsoft making these deals. You're seeing all this stuff happen. You're seeing Microsoft's budget, right, into infrastructure, like we mentioned, $50 billion next year. I think this does change Elon's mind a bit. He's like, we got to boost up our what we're doing here. We've got to be, speed it up however faster we can get. I mean, he mentioned how xAI was like burning the midnight oil, working in the late at night. I would imagine this week, next week, it's recruiting time, calling up people. And the next question is funding. It's like, how can we speed this up? Can we get more GPUs, right? Can we, invest more into infrastructure? Because that's the key question, It's just, they all have a plan. All these companies have a spending plan mapped out for a few years, right? How much money, how many GPUs, what type of model they're going to train. It's all there. And so you can accelerate, you can bring it faster. You just need to spend more money. Right. And it's, again, a business model issue. It's like, where's that money going to come from? Right. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think definitely with Elon, with Google, they're going to poach people. and get more serious about it, because Microsoft is getting more serious about it. Amazon, yeah, I think it's an accelerant. Yeah, John, you had something.
Oh, I was actually just going to ask. The thing that really blows my mind is where in the heck is Apple? Like everybody else is making these, including Amazon. Amazon and Meta are making plays. Apple is like the most valuable company in the world, and they're kind of built on this tech. And it's like, what is going on with them? And they've even got like neural engines in their phones and stuff. It seems
Exactly.
bizarre to me that they're, I don't know. Maybe there's something happening under the table that we don't know about, but it really seems weird that they're not really heavily playing in this field.
It's wild, right? Because Siri was the thing that's like, oh, how long ago did Siri come out? And it's literally Siri is like this. This is real Siri, and nothing has happened. So it has to be a culture thing, right? It has to be a thing where maybe they're waiting for the right moment to jump on and commit the resources. But it's just, I don't know, man. Like they could have capitalized on this years ago.
Yeah, so I used to kind of be like kind of more critical on Apple, like up until a few months ago, and then I had this realization a couple months ago. I'm like, dang, Apple is in such a crazy position, because even if they're a little bit late with large language models, they've got the business model where, for example, like John, you're talking about, they got these inference chips on their mobile devices that are just going to get better. They're best in class right now, but as they get better, they run better, larger models, et cetera, locally as well. But what they have, what very few companies have, is they have the ability to charge more for this device. Like, think about it. If LLMs come to this device as integrated completely, you thought paying $1,000 was a lot. What if it was filled with the best AI chips, neural net chips that you could buy, and it does this crazy like AI stuff? You're willing to pay $2,000 for this, Like, even without that price change, they're still able to spend tens of billions of dollars to train the largest language models that they need to train. So they're in the realm of possibilities just because they have the model to do it. But once you add the value to the device and you charge more for that device, because others to copy what Apple is doing with the amount of neural net processing power is hard to do. You can't just within a year do what Apple is doing. This took many, many years for Apple to get to where it's at. And so they're in a unique position that you think that they're late, you think that they're behind, you think that they don't care, but they're just a little bit slow. They're much faster with the hardware than other companies, actually. So they're a little bit slower. Once they get their LLMs, and they might take this approach where they're doing a locally, run language models, where they really want it to be more locally run and private, secure. If that's the case, in 2 or 3 years, you could have the best locally run small language models run on your iPhone, like that separate Apple from the rest. Apple's upcharging this thing like no other, because there's no other devices that can do what it can do. And they're spending tens of billions of dollars training these larger models to maybe you have a combination. The local machine does a bunch of it and it connects to the larger models to other stuff as well. But I'm envious of Apple.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think, so number one, Apple's culture, even from the way back with Steve Jobs, is always don't enter the market first. Like, look at what's actually percolating and then go for it. And they're doing that with the goggles too. So we'll see how that works. But so you're right. I mean, the fact that they're not the first mover doesn't necessarily put them out of the game. The second piece of this is, as you're absolutely right. I mean, their hardware is just crushing it right now. And the third is that I think that once somebody shows how to build these large language models, the next iteration of it is a lot faster, because they're like, oh, that's how you do it. So all we need is the data and the training time. We don't have to hunt around. Just like, is Tesla with full self-driving right now? I keep calling it like they're in the dark in a forest and they keep bonking their nose in trees and stuff. But once they've figured out the path, then other people can follow much faster to get to full self-driving. Similarly with large language models, once it's like, oh, that's how you do it, then you can follow much more quickly. So it's not going to take them 5 years to train these. I mean, look at Grok. They put it together in April and they had a model out in October. It's like, holy crap.
Apple has something as good as Grok, I think, or better right now. I
wanted to throw in ChatGPT. So I don't know if you've used it on your phone, but it's really cool because you can talk to it.
Yeah.
But there's about a 3-second delay. So just imagine with the iPhone, and the new Siri version, that it's instantaneous and it's just that good. I mean, holy, and then it goes out to the internet if it needs more resources. But the
Exactly.
first
Yeah.
interface is right. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be a game changer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you're like the latency is killing the
Yeah.
audio chat with ChatGPT for
Yeah.
me. I mean, I use it
Yeah.
all the time with my kids, but it's just if you have local inference doing, everything or a lot of the conversing back and forth, connecting when it needs to for extra backup,
Right.
yeah, it's going to be crazy. Yeah.
One of the things about Apple is, they can't release that product until they have the privacy piece locked down. It just won't be on brand for them unless they do. And no one has really cracked that nut yet. And so, yeah, I think that's probably also a factor.
Wild stuff. So like literally it's still as much as everything has changed, it's going to change even more. Like, so we're truly at the early stages. I mean, it still feels so early in the game. I mean, the Apple thing, it actually makes a lot of sense. It's been frustrating to watch them wait because they have so many resources and so much talent, and they have the thing. I mean, they have the thing right here. It's like, okay, so why didn't you guys take a market leading position? But after what you guys described, it makes sense. It makes sense that they would sort of capitalize on the opportunity once they feel like they're truly ready. I was looking online to see if there's any other breaking news. It does seem like we're still kind of where we're at now. Did you guys have anything else you want to hit? There's 3 chats I want to hit before we wrap it up. But is there anything we want to discuss on this topic?
The only other point that I was going to make, since we were talking about, the iPhone is basically a piece of distributed inference compute. And Elon has also made the point that the Tesla fleet is a giant distributed inference compute cluster. And the fact that it's built on, older fabs and is highly scalable for the vehicle, is a potential option for Tesla to pursue to ramp up the total amount of, they could create something that wasn't even necessarily installed in cars, but use some of the same infrastructure that's building FSD computers to massively ramp up some sort of an inference data center and cloud.
Right.
I think relatively quickly.
I just while we were talking earlier, I just did the calculation in my head, but because we were talking about $50 billion that Microsoft is spending to create their compute infrastructure. Well, Tesla, if you count $2,000 a car, which is what Monroe and Associates said was the hardware 3 cameras, etc. So like that, and 4 million cars, that's $8 billion that Tesla has in inference compute that's out there, that's distributed. So you can make the same argument for Google Android and for iPhone as well. But that people should not underestimate that. I think these giant data centers are a big thing, but I'm reminded of Isaac Asimov's stories in the 40s and 50s of these, like the entire, like all of New York, the subterranean part is all one giant computer, and that's the only way it works. I feel like we're back to that now with these giant compute clusters, but it's going to kind of reverse that trend, and we're going to get, like Dave was talking about, we've got all of these edge. I'm on a laptop that has an M2 Max in it. It's like, damn, this thing's got a lot of power inside of it. So there's a lot of edge compute that's out there right now that is underutilized for this stuff. So we could go that direction too.
Anything else before we hit 3 comments?
Yeah. I mean,
Good.
The ultimate edge compute device, the humanoid robot.
Don't underestimate Optimus. I told you the full self-driving in Optimus. That's the thing.
I mean, because the reason why it's the ultimate edge computing device is because you combine, you got this inference computer that can run, let's say, a super capable model, but you've got the form factor of usefulness, right? The physical usefulness. It's not just a computer screen or a phone or something. Your phone can't get you your lunch for you. It's like it doesn't move. But you've got this movable device in the physical realm, but has enough inference compute and the battery to power it all day. It's just got all of the pieces together. It's like the ultimate. Yeah.
It's so crazy, and I do wonder how much of these developments are going to drive the bot to be taken more seriously, by the broader public. I still think that they probably need some sort of prototype out there that's being used in the real world, freaking hammering a nail or pushing the lawnmower. But it's where we're going. It's where we're going. It's so exciting to think about. It's so wild. It's so crazy that we're talking about this like in 2023, and in a span of 2 to 3 years, all of this could be a reality. It's freaking wild. It's so
Just
crazy.
Everybody's talking about Microsoft and they're talking about Google, and it's going to end up being xAI and Tesla that's going to come out as the winner in the whole thing. They're going to just like
And Microsoft.
they're gonna out Microsoft.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Crazy.
it's pretty
And
crazy.
Apple.
By the way, before we get to the questions, I think Dave and Farzad, I'll definitely see you in Texas. What about you, Hans? Are you going to be there too? Oh,
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, it's a party.
Actually,
Definitely, so-
I'm going to be in Florida next week for a couple of weeks, so
Oh,
we'll be
okay.
missing the Cybertruck event.
Oh, well.
Unfortunate.
Dang.
Yeah.
Dang. Hans is
I'll see the
Hans is
rest
gonna
of it.
crash with us for a couple of days. It's gonna be awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Heck yeah. I'm gonna make him some barbecue. Maybe we'll go out to a barbecue place. Let me hit a couple spots here. Comments. Thoughts on possible lawsuits against the board, the OpenAI board. It all depends where this shakes out, right? Because it seems like sort of teetering on this stage where OpenAI might reconcile and come back. But any thoughts if that doesn't happen? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be massive lawsuits, right? Or how are you guys reading that?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as one of the reasons the board has been so silent is because of legal liability. They don't want to say the wrong thing. And the lawyers are telling them, be careful, whatever. And so they're trying to guard themselves. But yeah, if 95% of the company leaves, it's going to be pretty messy. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do another one from Pico's Bill. Again, thank you so much for the super chat. 70% this was appifying GPTs or 30% AGI proximity with no safety. Thoughts? John, I'm guessing it within the context of moving towards a for-profit model. I'm guessing this is what this is in context of. But do you have any thoughts there, John?
I'll definitely take your thoughts as well, because I'm not positive I totally understand. I guess the idea is the commercial aspect is 70% of the problem that dissolved the company, basically, or whatever. Got
Yeah,
Sam out
I
of there,
think
and 30% AGI.
So the question the way I'm taking it is the source of the tension and the problems, and the reason why the board was firing Sam was because 70% of the reason was he basically trying to commercialize, right, GPT for custom GPTs for people, and 30% was pushing forward AGI with not enough safety precautions, right? That's kind of his thinking.
Yeah, it's just so hard to know without more insight into what the board was doing. I wish I knew the people who are not part of the AI of the OpenAI team who are on the board. The three other people. I don't have enough insight into their. Are they more concerned about the AI safety issue, or are they people who are more concerned about going commercial faster? I don't know what their motivations are, and so it's just a really hard thing to answer. But certainly both of those things, I have to imagine, were part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, I think it's a common. Some of the other members had safety concerns, or they're part of groups that have AI safety concerns. Another thing is Sam Altman is very, very ambitious, risk taker out there, and some of these other ventures he's considering, whether it's this AI chip startup he was considering, or hardware, et cetera, whatever, it could have freaked out OpenAI a bit, where they're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And then another factor is the pace at which I think Sam was trying to push GPT-5 and 6, probably next generation models forward, where, for example, let's say they finished GPT-5 based model training a couple weeks ago, and he looks at this and he goes, oh my gosh, we need to raise a ton of money. We need 10x the amount of compute within 6 months, because this is going to go crazy. This is like so much better than GPT-4. And so he's like, we need to raise all this, money and capital and prepare for it. And this is freaking out some of the other people on the team. They're like, wait a minute, we haven't even gone through alignment with this GPT-5 model, and we haven't done our, testing all this other stuff. He's like, wait, but Sam is thinking a couple steps ahead. And so there's like tension behind, I think, this need to be responsible and cautious, but also this need to prepare for the expansion and the resources you need to deploy this at scale. They're already having problems with GPT-4 deployment, so imagine a bigger, larger model with 10x the demand. Like, this is going to be insane. And so I think a lot was at stake, and there was a lot of tension and tense just people, at it, and there just wasn't enough communication. And probably a lot of these folks, I won't say a lot, but a portion of them have maybe some communication issues. They're good at what they do, but they're not at the greatest with interpersonal skills, and relationships, etc. So a lot at stake, I think.
This could also explain something that Satya Nadella said recently. I don't remember exactly what date it was, but it was before Friday. But he said, we're going to give OpenAI as much compute as they need. And Dave, I think, because you don't think about that, but solving it, training it is one thing, but then to have 100 million people pinging it every day, asking it for answers. Woo, that is, that's like Elon says, it's one thing to design something, it's another to scale it out and build it in a factory. It's like, that's the kind of challenge you're looking at. So you're right. Sam might have been looking at that and going like, we need like so much. And Microsoft, that part of that $50 billion might have literally been to create that service for the public.
Yeah.
All right, let's do one more. From John Meissner, $20 super chat. Thank you so much, John. This is all fake. ChatGPT is in serious trouble because they are a 501c3 that is now for profit. This makes all of it go away. They become Microsoft employees. Everything is okie dokie. You're all missing the point. John, I see you shaking your head. Yes.
Well, I mean, this was what I was talking about earlier, whereas, it resolves a bunch of issues. It's just like, we're for profit now. OpenAI could become some sort of shell of its former self and a policy, some sort of research policy arm that doesn't actually really do anything anymore. That honestly is the simplest thing for them to do. They don't really have to deal with the whole issue. I actually do agree that is a factor in this, although I don't think that's what actually caused it. I just think it may be what Sam and Greg are probably like, oh, this is going to be so much easier than trying to negotiate and navigate this insane not-for-profit, for-profit thing that we created.
Yeah. Like, I've been like tracking Sam Altman for a very, very long time, since his early days of YC, Y Combinator, and way before that. I mean, he's been around for a while, but he's a smart guy, and he's a good deal maker. This guy is not like amateur level. I mean, he's very, very smart, very, very savvy. He made a deal with Microsoft, where they got 10, 13 billion without having to give any AGI to Microsoft, meaning all of the IP is pre-AGI. Once OpenAI reaches AGI, supposedly the IP agreement is off. Like, this is the negotiation that he's done. Like, this is most companies the size of Microsoft would not tolerate that type of agreement. It's like, what are you talking about? You get cut off right when and then who determines AGI? It's OpenAI. That's the agreement. Like, Microsoft doesn't, OpenAI determines when the agreement stops. It's like insane. But I think, the only reason why Sam Altman and Greg Brockman go to Microsoft, I think, is because they get majority ownership of a new spinoff at any time they want. I mean, that's the only way I could see it. Like, they would agree to that. They're not Microsoft employees for long. Like, they have way too much leverage. Imagine you've just created GPT-4, you're on the verge of GPT-5, you have 90% of your employees behind you willing to go anywhere. You could raise $10 billion tomorrow, for a new company. You've got the most leverage of any company startup in the world at this point. You're not going to sign your life away as a W-2 employee for Microsoft saying, okay, I'll just work for a salary. Like, that's not how it works. Yeah.
Hans, I saw you come off mute. Did you have something you want to add?
I was just looking at this question from Mimi. She asked, Altman may be smart, but is he a good person?
And I think that's some of the concerns that some people were having, right, around this, is that this is a for-profit motive. That was one of the questions I posited on Sunday, was like, what if all of this is just it's an opportunity to leverage financial gain, and in the process we could be opening up a Pandora's box that we're never going to be able to close because of the haphazard way potentially that this is going to approach. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the guy. I mean, he's clearly brilliant, and he's had incredible success for a really long time. But it's like, my overarching concern always has been with this technology is, when humans are involved, humans are not perfect. And if humans don't handle things perfectly, AGI or as near as perfect as possible, AGI will always have a risk of ending up with the wrong outcome. So I don't know. I mean, this whole thing is very fascinating to follow, nonetheless. And let's leave it off with this, I guess. The last post that came from Sam Altman. We have more unity and commitment and focus than ever before. We are all going to work together somewhere or other. I am so excited. One team, one mission. So this was about an hour ago. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure this whole thing will change by tomorrow, and then who knows, maybe we'll come back and do another one of these shows. So any parting words, Hans, John, Dave, anything you want to add before we wrap this sucker up?
No, it's fun chatting with you guys, catching up. Yeah, definitely appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, I enjoy this. This is really great stuff. Thanks for having us on, Farzad.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah. No, thank you guys
likewise,
for joining.
I loved the conversation. It was great.
Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning. This is like the Kardashians, but for nerds. You know, it's a bunch of tech drama. We sit down and we talk about it, and we get real nerdy with it. So make sure you go. Go ahead, John. Okay.
I was just gonna say, as the AI turns.
As the AI turns.
An old soap
exactly.
opera. Yeah.
Yeah. Dave Lee, make sure you go follow him at Dave Lee on YouTube, at Heyday7 on X. John, you can follow him at Dr. Know-It-All 16 on X or Dr. Know-It-All on YouTube. And Hans, you can find them on YouTube, Hans Nelson, or at Hans C. Nelson on X. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live. Thank you, mods, for the excellent work as always. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. We'll see what happens in 24 hours. Thank you, everybody. Have an excellent day. Bye-bye.